48 feature films, 3 Golden Globes, 2 Oscars, 1 Tony, and 1 name.
Denzel Washington.
Denzel Washington.
Denzel Washington, money earning, Mount Vernon, New York City.
I've been in love with movies for a while now, and I was recently talking to my friend about how different audiences choose to watch movies. I think those who are most into films, cinephiles, or whatever you want to call yourself, are more attracted to directors and at times writers. Not that actors aren't a point of interest, but just that the person running the show is prioritized. Whereas the average viewer prioritizes actors, they'll choose to watch films off the strength of the cast and will hesitate to watch a film that has nobody recognizable to them or someone they like in it. There are exceptions to this rule, like Spielberg or Tarantino. They seem to get butts in seats regardless of who's starring. And for individual cinephiles, I'm sure they all have their actors they'll watch anything they feature in. And this is a topic I'd love to dive into in more depth, but I say all this to say, for me, though I tend to watch films off the strength of the director more than anything, there are actors and actresses I will blindly follow into anything, like Matthew Lillard, Nicolas Cage, Toni Collette, Brendan Gleeson, Sigourney Weaver, Ethan Hawke, Willem Dafoe, and plenty others, but more than anyone I trust with my life, Denzel Washington. From the first time I watched Training Day to just the other day where I rewatched Crimson Tide, or just before where I was seated for The Equalizer 3, I adore this man and his style, and I sincerely believe he is the greatest actor of all time. And believe me, I know this is a bold claim. I know many of you will disagree, and since there is no definable metric for this claim, none of us are right or wrong, and this is just my opinion. But I think one of the main contributing factors to this belief is that Denzel is just reliable. Now, unless you've explored every film in his filmography, which I have, you'd be hard pressed to find a bad performance. Admittedly, I can name one or two because of his very early career having some mostly unseen rough patches, but in general, he is always giving 110 and never fails to understand what his role is. He has never felt miscast, he has never been in a film where he wasn't the standout, he has never been outshined, and on top of all of this, he has escaped the tragedy of a typecast. He stars in various genres constantly and delivers top quality material in every single one. He's been in action movies, courtroom dramas, sports films, biopics, film noirs, sci-fi, comedies, relationship dramas, Shakespearean works. But I think most agree that Denzel is at his strongest in an intensive dramatic role with occasional comedic beats like Alonzo Harris in Training Day or John Creasy in Man on Fire. But either way, no matter what he's doing, the man has unmistakable range, and he's an actor that almost everyone you ask will have a different favourite movie of. And this talent, this remarkable range and depth, his ability to be present in a scene, to be buried in his role so deep you no longer see Denzel but see Malcolm X, see Joe Miller, see John Q, has allowed him to explore films that may not always work, but he always seems to make work out for himself. Yes, he's been in some less than stellar movies, but he's never been less than stellar in them. Take for example this year's The Equalizer 3, by all accounts an average action movie, quite literally nothing special. In fact, for half of the movie it's just Robert McCall walking around Italy and seeing sights. With a lesser actor, this movie fails. It's fundamentally a poor action movie. I mean, even half of the fight scenes are sloppily put together because Denzel is getting older and slower, so the stunts can't be performed as slick as they used to, but the man has a charm, a way of inviting you into the world that is rarely seen with an actor. For all we love Marlon Brando, Robert De Niro, Leonardo DiCaprio, Tom Hanks, Sam Jackson and others, if the material isn't great, oftentimes they can't redeem it. This is especially present with someone like Will Smith. There's very few that can do well regardless of the movie that they're in. Elevating mediocre and even bad scripts to a decent and believable level is something that maybe only Denzel can really do this well. Also, when you listen to interviews or commentaries from anybody who has worked with Denzel, you will never hear a single ill word about him. All you ever hear is how hardworking he is, how kind he is, how grateful he is, how funny he is. He's a professional and a compassionate one at that. He treats his craft like the art it is and is respectful of the medium and all those involved. You don't hear much about his personal life. When was the last time you heard gossip about Denzel Washington? Never? There's a reservation in his personal life and a discipline in his professional one, and that again is something you rarely see, especially with someone as high profile as Denzel, because how much of his life do you actually know? Pretty much nothing. This is also something people like Will Smith struggle with. And let's not forget, handsome. He's an incredibly attractive man, and yet do you ever hear about that when people talk about his work? No, because it seems almost irrelevant. When talking about other attractive actors like a young Leo or Brad Pitt, Idris Elba or whatever, that attribute comes up constantly. Not to say that's all their talent summates to, but it is a contributing factor to their success and popularity. Like, think about the average person talking about Titanic, and Leo in that film specifically. Yes, they give him props for a great performance, but they can't resist mentioning how gorgeous he was in it. But whenever people are gushing over a Denzel performance, you'll rarely hear people talk about the fact that he was also very handsome whilst giving it. And he's an actor that even those not massively into cinema can recognize for his talent. You know, if you ask the average person what makes Robert De Niro great, the best they're gonna give you is a list of movies and maybe some quotes. Ask the same people about Denzel and they're going to give you more. They're going to tell you about a performance they specifically loved and why. And I think that's because he has a raw form of screen presence. He engulfs a moment. Whether he's giving a huge speech or whether he's just conversating, he demands your attention and you willingly give it. He takes lines that will gloss over your eyes if you've read them and makes them timeless quotables just by his inflections and commitment, his mannerisms that have become so iconic. And I think as an actor, especially the greats, you often find them tied to a great director for a large portion of their career, or at least star in multiple great movies from said director. Think Sam Jackson and Tarantino, De Niro and Scorsese, James Stewart and Hitchcock, John Ford and John Wayne, and for Denzel, you could tie him to Spike Lee for Malcolm X, Inside Man, He Got Game, Mo Better Blues, but for me I think the unmistakable duo is Denzel and the late Tony Scott. Together they made Man on Fire, Deja Vu, Unstoppable, Crimson Tide and The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. Every single film I just mentioned is an absolute heater, and for Denzel to make a name with two very distinctly dissimilar directors is an achievement. Also, just to mention it, but he has also worked with other great directors, but by far my favourite is with Ridley Scott in American Gangster, which is a top 3 Denzel film to me. But ultimately, you can read a million articles, tons of subreddit posts, watch a million YouTube videos, including this one, and it still won't quite put into words what makes Denzel so great. It's something you just have to witness. You have to see him perform. You need to soak in his characters and the wide variety of them to truly believe what I'm saying. And though Denzel is the single most important actor in my life and what I believe is the greatest of all time, I cannot well enough articulate to you why. But he can make the happiest character seem suicidal with 2 frames of an expression, captivate you and make you root for reprehensible people, and is never lost in a scene. He commands his screen time and makes a script seem improvised. But that's just me. What do you think? Do you agree that Denzel is the greatest actor of all time or not? If so, why? If not, who and why? And whether it's a film from who you consider the greatest actor of all time or not. As always, keep watching movies.